Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour Week 3 Injury Update. Get you ready for the weekend, see how the rankings adjust. Plus, a little bit later on, Logan Harper from FanshareSports.com is going to come on the program and talk about the most tagged golfers of the week. And we're going to try to project who the chalk plays at each position are going to be in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, and maybe some pivot plays that you can use to your advantage. Some elite players are going to come in. Some very low ownerships this week, so you might want to pay attention to that. Check the time codes for when that's going to happen if you just want to skip ahead. If not, just watch the entire show. Also, give us a like. That always goes a long way to do anything. Plus, comment and maybe give your favorite pivot play of the week in the comments, and maybe we can build sort of a consensus here. Maybe find some good players to move on to at each position. So do that up. Anyway, I want to get straight into the injury report this week, and there's a bunch of different guys that are up in the air right now. Usually Friday's practice tells us what we need to know. If players don't practice Friday, chances are they're not going to play Sunday. Now, we're doing a live show noon Eastern Sunday on the DraftKings Facebook page. It's a DK Live, Facebook Live, and we'll be going over all the inactives and how that really assesses the situation and changes potential ownership. And the big one that I'm really paying attention to right now is DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray still not practicing. He's dealing with a hamstring problem. Now, generally, like I just mentioned, if you don't practice Friday, you ain't playing. However, with DeMarco Murray, he has a history in the past of actually not practicing and then showing up on Sunday to play. So that is interesting from my perspective because this is really going to affect Derrick Henry's overall volume. I think that Derrick Henry is the play over DeMarco Murray, but it depends on how high I put him up in my rankings. Now, Seattle has a very good run defense, but this could affect his ownership on DraftKings as well, because if Murray gets announced as active, I think that Derrick Henry becomes a really good tournament play because people will not use him. Now, coincidentally, if Murray is declared inactive, people are just going to flood to Derrick Henry because he's going to become the chalk at a very good price in a situation where we know he's going to get all the volume. You don't find very many players at his price point on DraftKings that just generate so much volume. So pay attention to my rankings. They're up on DKPlaybook.com right now, as is my cheat sheet for week 3, both cash and tournament. I'll have those adjusted on Sunday after the inactives so you can see where people end up falling. But I would move Henry up a lot higher. Right now in the rankings, I have both of the guys in, assuming that it's around like a 75-25 split in terms of Derrick Henry. I don't love the matchup, though. Jimmy Graham is now going to be a game-time decision. With an ankle injury, I wouldn't be using Jimmy Graham. I'd look for alternatives in that spot if you need him. John Brown is likely not going to play with his quad injury. Marlon Mack is dealing with a shoulder injury that makes Robert Turbin the primary backup to Frank Gore, and he should see some more snaps. Randall Cobb, weirdly enough, when the week started, it really seemed like Jordy Nelson was going to be the one who we didn't know was going to play or not, because Randall Cobb is dealing with the shoulder injury. MRI came back negative. Everything seemed fine. Turns out, things not fine. He's going to be a game-time decision here, and where this is a late-ish game, you're going to have some alternatives in mind. If he does play, he might make a very nice GPP play, but he's someone I'm going to fade completely again. In season-long leagues, look for alternatives for Randall Cobb if he was someone that you were relying on. I doubt he is. He's probably your wide receiver 4, who you may have been playing because he's been playing well. Now you can just move him back to the bench and go with the safer option this week. Rex Burkhead did not practice Friday, and he is not expected to play for the Patriots this week. That means, and everyone else on the Patriots is basically gonna play. So in the backfield, being 13.5-point favorites at home against Houston, you have to think this is a Mike Gillislee game. And then you put that in twofold with all the other receiving options and even some of the running backs dealing with maladies right now, that just turning around, handing the ball to Gillislee keeps them all safe. You're not gonna ring out Amendola over the middle of the field a week coming back from a concussion. Just limit the potential for those guys getting more hurt, and you can do that probably pretty effectively if you get up early and just hand the ball off to Mike Gillislee. So James White will see more snaps and be more involved in the receiving game, if that was even a possibility. But it is, because Burkhead doesn't look like he's going to suit it up. Maybe Dion Lewis gets some more run here, but White is probably the guy. Gillislee, far and away the best option out of the Patriots backfield this week. Now, those are the guys that are doubtful to play. The guys that we know are for sure out so far, just announced, at least as it's coming through my timeline when I'm recording this, Tyler Eifert is not going to play against the Packers. We'll get to it a little bit later on with Logan, but AJ Green is the most tagged wide receiver of week 3. How quickly sentiment changes on AJ Green. He goes from, should I sell AJ Green for nothing, to, oh, we got to play AJ Green this week. I think you should play AJ Green this week, but in giant tournaments on DraftKings, mean, if the guy's going to be like 25% owned, Julio Jones is going to be like 3% owned. I know the matchup is tougher. Let's be real here, people. Julio Jones can win in big matchups in a high projected point total game. He can take down Slay. He's Julio Jones. It might not be a guarantee he takes him down and puts up 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, but that's on the table when you're dealing with Julio Jones. If you can get him for 1/15th the ownership of AJ Green, who, let's be real here, has not performed all that well, I think that does turn around here. But Julio Jones has a same upside, and if you get him at a 15th or 10th of the ownership, that's the move you want to take in giant GPPs. I wouldn't trust AJ Green, even with Eifert out and John Ross potentially being out as well in this spot. But double-digit target seems to be on the board in a positive game flow situation. But Julio Jones at the lower ownership in tournaments is where I'd be going. But Eifert is not going to play, so if he's your tight end, look at other options. Ben Watson is still widely available. Jack Doyle, Martellus Bennett, Eric Ebron. These are all guys that you can turn to this week. Even Austin Hooper in that same Falcons-Lions game. The Lions have not been good so far against big men. Other guys that have been declared out, Corey Davis with the hamstring injury, and Will Fuller is not going to make his return with the collarbone. The Corey Davis thing does open up more market share availability to Rashard Matthews, who is only $4,200 on DraftKings. I think he's a cash play this week. The Seahawks have given up the second most receptions and targets to slot receivers. We know that Mariota trusts him, and now without Corey Davis around, it might be a boost for Eric Decker. Sure, I think the majority of that will filter over onto Rashard Matthews, though. That is something I really like a lot. And with Fuller still going to be out, Bruce Ellington will return this week and could be a very, very sneaky GPP play and PPR play in season-long formats. He's someone who had a connection with Braxton Miller. Braxton Miller is another guy on the team, with Deshaun Watson in the preseason, and someone just runs very short A-dot routes, very easy completions, and doesn't really move too far off the line of scrimmage, and that's something that could be a very easy out and a valve almost for Watson in this situation in a game where they're projected to pass a lot against the Patriots. It just could be a very good floor for receptions there. Guys that are questionable but probably going to play this week, Devontae Parker hasn't been practicing, but Adam Gase says that he is likely going to play. The same thing with Jarvis Landry. And then we look at Melvin Gordon showed up with a knee problem. He's going to be fine. I still really like Melvin Gordon. His ownership is going to be way down. I think his floor is very safe against Kansas City. He's a must start this week. Jordy Nelson with the quad looks like he's going to play. Sam Bradford, we got some news coming off the wire after we recorded, so let's go back and digitally put it in. I mean, I wouldn't want to lie to you and say that this came through, because later on in the show I'm going to talk about how if Bradford ends up playing, that Diggs and Thielen could make contrarian plays. I wouldn't really go with that right now with Case Keenum under center, but Adam Schefter is reporting that Sam Bradford has been officially declared out for Week 3 against Tampa Bay, so don't worry about them. Dalvin Cook, though, still someone to keep on your radars. Terrence West practiced Friday. It looked like he was going to miss the game in London. Not going to be the case. Still really like Buck Allen. Have him number 10 in my running back rankings, just because against that defensive line, I think they might have to turn to the air a little bit more, which is why I like Ben Watson and why I like Buck Allen, because he is the receiving back out of the two. I would not play Terrence West this week. Also on the report, Gronk is dealing with a groin injury. He's going to be around 70-75%, but he's going to be playing. Jordan Howard with his shoulder probably will end up playing, but be limited. Rob Kelly's rib problems, which look like we're going to take him out, are going to have him back in, which means Chris Thompson's still a fine start. P. Ryan's going to drop way down the rankings. I think it's probably going to be a carry split between Rob Kelly and P. Ryan, but if this is a game where, I mean, as home dogs, Washington's going to play Oakland. Oakland's likely to score a lot, which means the Redskins are going to have to pass, and if the Redskins are passing, Chris Thompson will be the one on the field. Even in standard formats, he may end up being the superior play overall of that three-headed monster, although I do think that Rob Kelly, if they do, we're not going to know because it's the Sunday night game, and that active status won't come out until around 6:45 Eastern, 7 o'clock Eastern. So, I mean, don't play Rob Kelly or P. Ryan if you don't need to, unless it sounds like Kelly is going to be out, which at this point, it does not seem that way. Jared Cook is dealing with a shoulder injury. You don't need to play Jared Cook, even though it is a high projected point total game. Chris Hogan and Philip Dorsett and Danny Amendola are all going to play, it looks like, for the Patriots, which means in order of my preference, just because I think that the Texans pass rush is really good, I would go Amendola, Hogan, then Dorsett, who I don't think is going to factor into much now that Amendola is back in terms of snap count. In terms of PPR league for standard leagues, Hogan is always the better play because of the giant upside that he possesses. Also on the injury report, J.J. Nelson popped up with a hamstring problem. John Brown is going to be out, so just more and more for him right now. And then Evan Ingram is dealing with a concussion. He is limited. There's still no word whether he's past protocol or not, so he could be a late inactive. That is something to really monitor if you picked him up off the waiver wire this week or returning to him against the Eagles. In my mind, I think that he's going to play, but that is a surprise we could get hit with on Sunday morning, so don't be shocked if it happens, and have a plan B in place if you need to. I know tight end is very thin, but this is the world we live in. You got to figure it out. All right? Coming up next, Logan Harper from Fanshare Sports is going to be on the line to talk about the most chalk and best pivot plays of the week for the Week 3 DraftKings Millionaire Maker. Stay tuned. Keep it rolling on the Pat Mayo Experience now, bringing in from fansharesports.com, Logan Harper. You can follow him on Twitter at LoganHarper11 to talk about the chalk plays and pivot plays of Week 3 on DraftKings. But before we get to that, Logan, you are in the Fantasy Golf World Championships right now. It's the final week, the Tour Championship. I'm surprised you're not sweating.
It will be a tough sweat this weekend. I'm a rough start day one, but middle of the pack, and hoping to bring home the title to the Fanshare name.
Who do you have on your team?
So I've got kind of a Rahm, Thomas, Rose stack at the top that's doing well, but got a few stragglers at the bottom. So need Thomas and Rahm to kind of break through this weekend.
I know this is an NFL show, and we'll talk about ownership, but how much did ownership factor into how you constructed your team this week? Because in a limited field there's only 30 players in the Tour Championship, there's no cut, and the finals of the Fantasy Golf World Championship don't feature all that many entries. How does ownership factor in there, or do you just go chalk and not worry about it?
Well, the toughest part is the fact that there's only 30 players in the field, right? So almost everyone's going to have some ownership of some sort. And I really just tried to find the people that over the past few weeks, the Fantasy Golf World Championship, that people hadn't been on, which were kind of Rahm and Thomas. And I felt, if they had been rolling with other people the past few weeks, I figured going into this week, they might not be on them as well. And I really liked their upside this week. So decided to, take the ownership approach that way.
All right, well, let's get into Week 3 of the football season. We'll go position by position to talk about the most talked about players of the week. We'll start at running back, and really, I don't think there's much of a surprise at the top of the start mentions in terms of Fanshare Sports around the industry. If you go to fansharesports.com, you can find the entire aggregation, and it's Jay Ajayi. He's number 1 on that list. He's followed by Ty Montgomery, and then Le'Veon Bell has 17 starts, which I was kind of stunned about because he's kind of turned into this guy where it seems like everyone said, oh, no one's going to pay up for Bell. He's going to be super low owned, so let me hype up Bell. And now it looks like he's going to have massive ownership anyway. Theo Riddick, Christian McCaffrey, C.J. Anderson, Devontae Freeman, Isaiah Crowell, Mike Gillisley, and Chris Carson lead the entire list in terms of start tags this week. So it seems like all the ownership is funneling into one spot near the top. It seems like people are paying up for running backs this week. Would you expect that trend to continue?
Yeah, I would. And I think, the guys at the top are just the 3 guys that are going to have the most volume, pretty much bar none. And Ty Montgomery right there at 6,900 after, a primetime slate where he got the majority of the carries, a bunch of touches in the receiving game as well. And, a bunch of owners were very happy with his performance last week. And I think a lot of people that might not have had him will, potentially try to jump on the bandwagon this week against a struggling Bengals team, to say the least.
So if we're going to get guys like Theo Riddick at high ownership, he's $5,100, or even Christian McCaffrey at $61, C.J. Anderson at $58. If you have these mid-tier guys, and when I did the Wednesday show with Siege, we kind of went over this mid-tier level, and there's a lot of pretty decent options from it. Is the strategy in giant GPPs this week is to maybe move off of those guys onto other ones? Like, I'm big on Tariq Cohen this week. I know the price is up, and Jordan Howard aside, I don't know how much he's going to play. It seems like he is going to be active for that game, but I'm just purely on him for PPR reasons only in DraftKings scoring. I think he's going to outsnap him. I think he's going to get a ton of receptions, and it doesn't seem like anyone's talking about him, and they're talking about guys like Chris Carson who just don't catch passes. I don't understand what the logic is in terms of doing that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a viable play this week, is kind of spend down a little bit at running back and really try to pay up for one of the big names at wide receiver. like Julio Jones or for example. But yeah, I think there's a couple guys down in this 4 to even 4K range that you could kind of pivot onto and go away from the high ownership at the top.
Who are a few of those guys? Because I'm looking at Chris Thompson specifically, because I think his ownership is going to be killed with the news that Rob Kelly is probably going to play. But I don't think that Rob Kelly being active really affects Chris Thompson all that much. If they're losing, Chris Thompson's going to be on the field, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think another guy down there is Isaiah Crowell against the crappy Colts defense. He's gaining a little bit of momentum, but tag-wise on Fanshare Sports. But at 4,800, he could be a pivot play down there. I think Jaquiz Rodgers as well, down in that 4K range, is another possibility, especially if Bradford isn't playing for the Vikings. They could have Case Keenum back there turning the ball over and giving Jaquiz a few short yardage touchdown runs.
Well, if Bell and Ajayi and Montgomery are going to be the mega chalk from the top, I know that Melvin Gordon popped up unexpectedly with a knee problem on the injury list. It looks like he's going to be fine. He was just simply limited. I think in terms of his floor, and against Kansas City, who is, they're an all right defense. They're not lights out by any means. If we're going to talk about all these volume guys who are at the top, and that's why they're getting all the hype, why isn't Melvin Gordon there? And is he going to be in single-digit ownership? Because if that's the case, he's the pivot play, isn't he?
I think he and Hunt at the top are the pivot plays there. I think both of them will be close to single-digit ownership based on the tags. And like you said, Hunt is playing, it's the same matchup. Hunt's playing against the Chargers there. I think based on his performance the past 2 weeks, he's looking like a stud running back. And Gordon, getting a bunch of volume in the running and passing game. I think both of them will make very viable pivot plays of trying to fade away from Montgomery and Ajayi.
I think the two biggest ones that I'm looking at right now, I'm really surprised Marshawn Lynch isn't being more talked up. I have my hesitations with him after what I saw last week. They get up by a bunch. They're like, all right, Marshawn, that's enough of you. We're going to win this game. You go to the bench. And that kills all of the upside that comes along with him. But there is a scenario. I really love the Raiders stack in terms of Cooper, Crabtree, and Carr. Just that triple stack is very enticing. But there's also a situation where those three guys are good and Marshawn just rushes in every touchdown. It's basically the same sort of game plan why people are hyping up Gillislee this week. I think Lynch makes a lot of sense too, but no one's talking about him. So instead of like Christian McCaffrey, would Marshawn Lynch be a viable play? And Dalvin Cook is right there. I have not heard a single word about him all week, myself included. I wasn't really on my radar against what I perceived to be a good Bucs defense, but it looks like Bradford might play now, and if that's the case, he's going to get all the volume. Is he like a 1% ownership guy who we know is going to get a ton of volume?
Yeah, because I think when people are starting to build their lineups to start the week, they're really worried about that offense, particularly with Bradford potentially out, or maybe he gets injured again. And I think that's going to significantly limit Cook's ownership just because they think the offense as a whole will struggle. So I think you could definitely get him in that 1 to 2% range.
Yeah, and if you get him in the 1 to 2% range, even if you play 10 lineups, let's say, and you play him in 2 of those lineups, you're going to be massively overweight on the field.
10x potentially overweight, so that'd be great.
Yeah, and we know we saw it last week. If he didn't get his touchdown vultured, he would have had a good game against Pittsburgh. And just because he doesn't find pay dirt now kills his ownership for 1 week. I mean, coming off of last week, if he was in an all right matchup, people would have played him forever, and it didn't happen. The only other guy that I'm really worried about here, soaking up a lot of ownership, and it has a lot to do with DeMarco Murray and his health status. Now, we've seen DeMarco Murray play before after not practicing, but I think he's going to be limited with that hamstring either way. If he is declared out on Sunday morning, what do you think is going to happen to Derrick Henry's ownership?
It's tough because he's being tagged a lot, obviously, because of the situation, but only one start recommendation on Fanshare Sports.
That's from me.
Yeah, that's probably from you. I think that's going to lead. I think that means that people are just too concerned about the situation as a whole and likely won't be getting the news till the last hour before. I think Henry will be pretty under-owned there in that mid-range, and if you're trying to pivot off the top, it's definitely another option if DeMarco Murray does end up not playing.
But if he doesn't end up playing, I feel like people are just kind of holding that in their back pockets. That's what they're waiting for. So this could go from a situation where if Murray is active, and even though we don't know what his workload is, Henry's ownership could be like 6-7%. But if DeMarco Murray is declared out of this game, then you're looking at a situation where he could just balloon up to 15-20% very quickly. At least that's the way that I'm reading the tea leaves, because everyone's kind of talking about him. He's on everyone's radar. It's not just like all of a sudden, boom,
oh, for sure,
Derrick Henry's the starter all of a sudden. We didn't see it coming. We know the situation. We're just waiting for the information. And I think that a lot of people are doing the same thing.
mean, yeah, some people believe Henry's a better back than DeMarco Murray, so they definitely, those type of people definitely will have that on their radar, ready to plug and play if DeMarco news comes out. So I think your analysis makes sense, but I'm not sure he reaches up to that 15-20% range.
Let's switch to receiver in the most tagged guys of the week. Shockingly enough, the two at the top, AJ Green and Rashard Higgins. I thought that Green would be just coming into the week on Monday when you have the first look of everything. It's AJ Green. He's coming off 2 terrible weeks. The only questions that I'm getting about in season long are, should I cut AJ Green, basically? Should I sell him for nothing? It's like, no. AJ Green's going to be fine. He just complained. They have a new offensive coordinator, an extended week off after playing last Thursday against a weak defense. AJ Green is going to be fine in the situation. I was like, he's a bit expensive, though, so people might not take him. Turns out people are going to use AJ Green in this spot. And Antonio Brown makes this list, too. So it's Green, Higgins, Adams, Funches, weirdly enough, Keenan Allen, Antonio Brown, Devontae Parker, Deshaun Jackson has 10 start tags, which I did not see coming, Michael Crabtree, and Terrell Pryor. This is just a hodgepodge of just weird receivers I didn't expect, but based on Brown being highly owned and Green being highly owned, I still wouldn't use Green in cash games, by the way. It seems like Julio Jones, everyone's terrified of Slay, but I think it was week 3 last year when everyone was terrified of Julio Jones against Carolina and he went for 300 yards. Like, anytime that you can get, like, low-owned Julio, I think that's the move in tournaments.
Yeah, so Julio, was the second most tagged wide receiver last week. Has had a huge drop-off, which we kind of look at week to week, and people clearly just falling out of love with him for this week in particular, partially because of that price jump. At the top, I can't do AJ Green. I understand your analysis from kind of the early week, but based on the fact that he's got the most tags right now, looking to be one of the highest owned guys, I love Julio Jones this week as a good pivot play there. And I think that Falcons offense right now is being a little underlooked. It's got the 4th highest team total in a dome against the Lions on the road. And I think their offense looked pretty good against the Packers last Sunday night. So I really like that offense, Falcons offense, and Julio Jones will be the first play for me there.
Can you explain to people how using FanShare Sports and the tags actually directly relates to ownership? Because sometimes it can be way off. Sometimes the industry's on one guy and that just kind of goes over the head of the public. They don't want to believe in it. So what sort of correlation do you see between the tags and the actual ownership in terms of the Millionaire Maker?
Yeah, so we see basically what we look at each week is the top 10 guys at each position, and generally 8 of the 10 at least are in the top 10 in ownership. So you're really able to target, it might not be exactly the right order. It might not, AJ Green might be the second highest owned to Higgins versus the tags is 1, 2. But you're at least kind of getting that sense of these are going to be the guys in the top 10 in ownership pretty comfortably.
So, I like Rashard Higgins, everyone is sort of on him. It logically makes a lot of sense. But if he's going to be the most owned or second most owned or third most owned receiver of the week, does it make sense just to completely fade him in giant tournaments and just maybe he has he's Rashard Higgins. It's very possible that he has a bad game here.
And I don't know what you think about this, but if you're wanting to pay down at that second wide receiver slot, Britt is right there across from him in the wide receiver pool for the Browns at 4,100, pretty much the same price. Has only 2 start tags this week. So, he with Coleman out, he's definitely looking to get a little bit more volume this week, and I think he's made it vocal that he's hoping to get a few more touches.
Well, he had a talk with Hugh Jackson, so now it looks like he's actually going to try this week. So that could be something. The guy that I like as the pivot move in this range is actually Rishard Matthews. Like, I was kind of stunned that after Corey Davis was declared out with the hamstring, that he wasn't being more talked up. I have my cash game cheat sheet right now, which you can find at dkplaybook.com. I just like how he sets up against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have allowed the second most receptions to slot receivers so far through 2 games. I mean, that's where he's going to go. He's Mariota's main focus, and I think that Seattle is going to be more concerned with taking out Delaney Walker than Matthews, and we know that he is a red zone presence. We all thought it would be Decker coming into the season because that's why they went out and got him. That has not turned out to be the case. I'm not saying what has happened in the past is definitely predictive of what's going to move forward, but if Matthews is not being talked up, I'm willing to move 90% of my Higgins shares in tournaments onto Matthews. I still think that Higgins is a very sensible play for a cash game, but I don't think that you have to use him.
No, I completely agree with that. And, there was the story on Tennessee coming into the year, so many mouths to feed, and that's kind of being narrowed down due to injuries. And I think it makes Matthews a great play. I think my favorite pivot play in the wide receiver range is actually Tyreek Hill. Always a great GPP play, but he's right now 24th in starts on Fanshare Sports. So surprisingly not getting that much interest at 6,600 there. And, went off against the Patriots week 1. Got a lot of touches week 2, but didn't really translate it to too many points. I think he had probably 10 points week 2, but I think going against the Chargers this week, he's definitely viable for a 2-touchdown game or something like that as a GPP flyer.
Well, it seems like that entire range is going massively under-owned right now, at least in terms of tags. You have like Golden Tate in that range, Kelvin Benjamin, because people are talking up Devin Funches. I like Funches. I liked him as sort of like a deeper, sneaky play, but now he's not sneaky anymore, so I can't use him. So Kelvin Benjamin is right there. Stefon Diggs, if Bradford plays, whether Bradford plays or not, no one's using Stefon Diggs. If Sam Bradford plays, I think getting him on to a few rosters is very sensible. And Tyreek Hill, especially against the Chargers, who just suck over the middle of the field. That's pretty clear. Even if you wanted to play an Alex Smith, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce stack, that's a triple stack that no one's going to have. And if Kareem Hunt doesn't get all the touchdowns and they do score 20 points in this game, that might be enough for that triple stack to pay off.
No, I love that stack. And I think, they've got a pretty good D-line there at the Chargers right now. And I think, maybe they could limit Hunt and some of his workload there or production there. And I think that stack would potentially be one of those GPP winning stacks.
Are there any more pivot plays that you can see? Like Amari Cooper is no longer being talked up because he's dealing with this knee injury. Oh, Josh Norman's going to shut him down. I've already expressed how I like the Raiders stack this week. I think it's very smart. But in a week where Crabtree's usually a really great play because no one wants to use Crabtree. Everyone always wants to use Cooper. But wouldn't this be a spot to use Cooper and try to swing for the fences?
Yeah, if you really like that Raiders offense this week against the Redskins.
Shouldn't we like it, though? They're the highest projected total of the week.
No, completely agree. So if you're wanting to, stack that, I think that the stack is Amari Cooper just because it's looking like Crabtree's going to be one of the highest owned guys there. Particularly that correlation between Carr and Crabtree will be widely used. So I think just moving to Cooper right there and hoping he gets the touchdown reversion from Crabtree from last week, I think that's the play.
So it's weird because you could almost construct a team of completely chalk down the board, the value chalk, the expensive chalk, whatever. And as your first 2 receivers, if you just started Julio Jones and Amari Cooper, no one else is having your team.
I wouldn't say no one else, but yeah, I think it's definitely going to be pretty lowly owned.
But I mean, if there's a way where you kind of want to save some ownership to try to differentiate your team a little bit, those 2 seem like the perfect 2 guys to target.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking if you get to play the teams that are going to be the high totals, and you also get guys that might not be on the same rosters together. So I think that's definitely a good play.
All right, let's switch to quarterbacks and talk about the chalk up top where the stacks are coming from. Matt Stafford, clearly the most talked about guy of the week. I think he's the best value on the board, price per point. He's $6,200. He's facing Atlanta. Atlanta's going to have to Atlanta's going to score points. We don't expect them to get shut out in Detroit. So the situation which happened Monday night where Stafford basically took himself out of the game because all he had to do was turn around and hand the ball off. Maybe he got a sore wrist from it, from all the handing off he had to do. But the Falcons are going to score. He's going to have to pass. They're running more, but the running is not working. They're going to pass when they get inside the red zone near the goal line. That's just something they do. And Theo Riddick, who is also super talked up this week, on paper is the perfect guy to exploit the Atlanta defense because they do not cover pass-catching running backs really well. So Stafford, I'm okay with him. I don't care if he's chalk or not. He's someone I'm going to play probably definitely in cash. He's going to be my anchor. But after that, it goes Cousins, Derek Carr, Cam Newton, Deshaun Kaiser, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Jay Cutler, Carson Wentz, and Andy Dalton. If Aaron Rodgers is the 6th most tagged guy of the week right now in terms of starts, and he only has 9, and for comparison's sake, Matthew Stafford has 29. I like Carr. I think he has a ton of upside. I like Cam because it's against a bad defense, and it's a spot where, even though he has a lot of tags, I could see him falling towards 6th, 7th% owned. I don't know what to make of Rodgers. I think he's going to be incredible this week. It looks like Jordy's going to play. Adams is one of the most talked about receivers of the week. Cobb is iffy to play this weekend. Martellus Bennett could get going against the Bengals, but it seems like a pretty soft matchup. And any time that I can get Aaron Rodgers below that 10% threshold, I tend to just use him blindly.
Yeah, I like Rodgers a lot this week. And I think that with quarterbacks, the important thing to note is that, there's 30 quarterbacks and only 100% ownership to go around because there's only one slot on your roster, right? So the average quarterback is going to be 3% owned. So while Stafford might, broach that 10, 15% ownership because he is, like you said, the best play of the week, these other guys that, the 6th through 15th in tags are probably going to be down there in that sub 5% ownership. So yeah, you can definitely get Rodgers pretty low owned this week. I think one other guy there that's not even in the top 10 in tags is from that same matchup, the Lions-Falcons, is Matt Ryan. I think it's in a dome. It could, end up being a pretty fast-paced game with a lot of scoring. And if you believe that and you like Stafford, I think Ryan's also got to be a quarterback in your pool for this week.
So those are the two highest totals of the week. Oakland at Washington, Atlanta at Detroit. They're the only two that are projected for over 50 points as a game total. Like if you were to do a few game stacks and you wanted to focus on the Falcons at Detroit, would it make sense to kind of play both sides of it? Like have some Julio, Matt Ryan, Mohamed Sanu teams, maybe throw a Taylor Gabriel team instead of Mohamed Sanu, and then
your boy Hooper.
Yeah, Hooperton, he's great. And then we just saw the tight ends really kind of exploit Detroit on Monday night with Ingram, and even Rhett Allison got into the action a little bit. So I think that makes sense as a giant GPP play. But even from the other side, like the guys that aren't being talked up on the Lions right now, like Stafford's going to be highly owned, Riddick's going to be highly owned, but it doesn't seem like anyone else is. Like he's bombing it to Marvin Jones right now. Like Golladay in this spot makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's weird because Stafford is by far the highest tagged player on the entire slate, or on the quarterback wise, and his wide receivers and just skill position players aren't really up there in the top 5 of each of their positions. So it's kind of hard to see where people are going, and maybe it's just a big mix of Theo Riddick and Golden Tate and, like you said, Jones. So I think find your guy that you like there and kind of go all in.
The only other elite type of player, and this is the way that I always like to play pivots and contrarian plays, is take an elite player who has a bad matchup and just hope that his eliteness will shine through. And Drew Brees isn't on this list whatsoever. Carolina just shut down Shady McCoy last week, couldn't get a run game going. They're number 1 in giving up the fewest amount of points against opposing quarterbacks right now, but they've played Brian Hoyer and Tyrod Taylor. Now, I know that the 49ers offense looked like world beaters on Thursday night, but that game just kind of came out of left field. No one really expected that offense to look as good as it did, and maybe it was a product of them getting down by a bit and the Rams kind of taking the foot off the throat and not playing as tough coverage anymore, and Brian Hoyer was able to take advantage. Drew Brees, well, he hasn't looked great so far, and the Carolina defense has. He still is an elite talent with guys that can make plays against Carolina. Is he someone to look at as a pivot play, or do you think that just, if you're going to do that, just move on to Matt Ryan instead?
No, I like Brees as well. I think he's only got 1 start tag, so I think he could be way down there in the sub 1% almost. I think a stack with him and Thomas and even Fleener there, I think could be potentially viable. And I mean, obviously the narrative this week is he's on the road, outdoors. He doesn't perform well there, but variance happens, and I think there's always the potential upside for a 4 touchdown game there. So.
The biggest chalk discrepancy of the week, I think, is going to happen at either tight end or defense. So when you look at the top of the tight ends, it seems like if people are going to pay up at the position, Zach Ertz is the guy. If people are going to pay down at the position, Jack Doyle is the guy. They have way more tags than anyone else, 27 apiece. Then it goes Jared Cook, who's dealing with a shoulder injury right now, by the way, people, so watch out for that. Eric Ebron, Ed Dixon, who can't catch, which is stunning. Travis Kelce, Zach Miller, Jordan Reed, Ben Watson, and Austin Hooper. Of course, Ben Watson not a part of the main slate because he plays in the London game. But if Travis Kelce, right now, down on that list, I know he's more expensive than Ertz, but if Ertz is going to be like 35% owned, which is in the realm of possibility right now, just based on how well he is. Listen, I like Zach Ertz. I don't want to say that I don't. But if I'm going to get Travis Kelce at 1/8 the ownership, I still prefer his upside.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think the middle of the field should be open in that game. I think Kelce is a great play if you're going to pay up. It's only an extra $1,000 there, and I think he's got a lot more upside than Ertz, and I think that's the play right there is Kelce.
And I guess if it's not Ertz or it's not Doyle, it just seems like no one else is going to be chalk, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, I think you can, if you're trying to pay down, just move away from Doyle and you can find a bunch of guys like Fleener, Hooper, whoever, Miller, that will be pretty low owned there.
I'm kind of stunned that Fleener's not being more talked up this week. I would have expected him to fall inside the top 10 of start tags. Just he's now played 3 games where Willie Snead hasn't played since he's been on the Saints, and he's got a touchdown in all 3 of those games.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot this week. I think he is the guy to stack with Brees in that game against the Panthers. If you actually can kind of believe in Brees, and even if you are going to pay down a little bit at tight end, I think he's a good pivot off of Doyle there.
As it's shaping up right now, a defense that I thought was going to be super sneaky, but everyone is reading the same tea leaves as me. The Eagles come in at number 1. They have 25 tags. They are a good price, only $3,000 this week. And the Steelers are next. So it's the Eagles, the Steelers. The battle of Pennsylvania defensive supremacy continues, I suppose. But then it's the Dolphins, Patriots, Packers, Ravens, Panthers, Broncos, Buccaneers, and Browns. I think out of all those defenses, I mean, we can pivot onto someone else, but those are really the good matchups of the week. It feels like the best scoring defense is going to come out of this mix. If you want to save the ownership, although I do like the Eagles, I think they're cash viable. I think they're tournament viable, and they're a nice pair up with Darren Sproles if you do want to use them, see if you can get a double dip on a return and get those double points. But it seems like the Broncos defense might be the way to go. Everyone's calling that a trap game, myself included. It seems like a really weird spot, but Buffalo's offense has not been good, and frankly, Tyrod Taylor leaves himself open to a lot of sacks all the time just by trying to extend the plays, and the Broncos are getting to the quarterback right now. They seem like a very high upside play, and if they're not going to be super talked up, that might be where I end up going in tournaments.
Yeah, and they actually have a pretty low sentiment rating on FanShare, only 80% sentiment, so that's kind of one of the things we look at to see, while they're 8th in tags, maybe they're going to be a little bit lower owned than expected, and I think like you said, it's a great defense that could potentially get some turnovers, and there's so much variance at the defensive position here. It's all going to matter about sacks and some type of return touchdowns. I'm definitely moving away off of the Eagles there to someone like the Broncos or the Bucks, particularly if Bradford's not playing.
I guess the other one, right at sort of at the same price as the Eagles, is the Chiefs. Like I talked about, the Chiefs aren't a great defense, and I do like Melvin Gordon in this spot, but it could be a situation where Phillip Rivers just throws the ball a ton. We know they can get into the backfield, and the San Diego offensive line isn't so great, and Phillip Rivers not afraid to turn the ball over. They could be a very high upside play, and I guess you pair him with Tyreek Hill, and then you might be onto something there, right?
Yeah, you could definitely double dip there, and I think historically, I don't have the stats to back me up here, but I feel like they're a turnover generative defense there, and I think that's a good play there.
Yeah, and I feel like Philly is very much in that same equation, where Philly's not a great defense, but they get good pressure and they're opportunistic. I would think that the Chiefs, at least historically, fall into that same mold as well.
Exactly, and that's what you're looking for defenses, and I think moving off the Eagles chalk to someone like a Chiefs or a Broncos makes perfect sense.
All right, Logan Harper. Check him out on Twitter at Logan Harper11. Do you have anything coming out this weekend in terms of fansharesports.com and maybe a projection article or some sort of model or anything like that?
Yeah, so at Fanshare right now, we're working to put together we've got a beta version of a football ownership projections. We've got a golf ownership projections model as well, which has done great this summer. And so kind of currently working on a football ownership projection, so use the tags and kind of our knowledge of ownership to project out, and hope to have that up and running in a couple weeks here. Just currently in the beta testing, and once we feel comfortable with it, bring it out there. And then other than that, follow me on Twitter, LoganGHarper11, and follow me along this weekend in the Fantasy Golf World Championship.
Yeah, so everyone send their best wishes to Logan at LoganHarper11, and hey, maybe what's first prize? $400,000?
$200,000 to first, like $150 to second, so some big prizes up top.
$150 to second. It's very top heavy.
$150,000.
Well, I mean, listen, even if you come second and win $150,000, I think you'll be doing all right. Can I say that?
Oh yeah, you gotta. Any of these top prizes, I'd be happy with. So.
Well, let me ask you this then: what if you come last? What do you win for last? Because that's what I would be really concerned about.
Last is like 8,000. So.
But you've been winning money each week by moving on, haven't you?
So it hasn't cashed out. So this would be like the cash out effect, effectively. So, is this last week here? So
it'd be after everything kind of piled itself up, the $8,000 payout is what you would get after making it to the finals.
Yes.
All right, man. Well, good luck.
Not too bad.
Let's hope Kevin Chappell can turn his fortunes around.
Great. Yeah. Bad guy.
Who else is it that you need? That's Sergio.
Yeah, like Sergio, and I just need Thomas and Rom to pull away here somehow. So.
How did you end up on Sergio this week?
He's got some pretty good course history at Atlanta, and he's a good ball striker. Obviously, hasn't been playing great since the marriage, but I thought he was going to be able to ball strike it to that this week, and he kind of showed some positive signs at the end of last week. Ended up finishing, I think, 12th at the BMW. So
Well, it's kind of
So
funny.
it was a more course fit, I guess.
Yeah, well, I really like the ball striking angle too, and I didn't end up. I ended up at like 2 or 3 shares of Sergio, but I didn't take who's like the best ball striker on tour, Kyle Stanley. So it made a lot of sense. He was first round leader.
Yeah, I was trying to get there. I didn't have enough money to like. I had 6,200. I ended up playing Hadwin at 6,200. He's doing like middle of the pack, but needed an extra 100 to get to Stanley and get that extra ball striking. But he's looking good. Hopefully he regresses to his normal, flat line playing ability.
Oh yeah, when the pressure gets cranked up on Kyle Stanley, you'll just watch him miss like 8 2-foot putts in a row. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
That's what I'm looking forward to today. So.
All right, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at ThePME on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which I suggest you do so you can keep up to date on everything, every piece of content that goes out. All the shows right now are up on DKPlaybook.com and the DraftKings YouTube page for the video version, iTunes, Stitcher, Audio Boom, and Google Play for the audio versions. Always uncut, always on demand, whenever you want them. Remember to give the show a like, too. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck this weekend. I'll see you next time.